Valyrian freehold. The term Valyrian freehold refers to the area of land controlled by the Valyrians on the continent of Essos. Centered around the city of Valyria in the eponymous peninsula, the freehold was the greatest civilization of its time, and at the height of its power covered over half the known world. The rise of Valyria. c. 8000 BC, on the eastern continent of Essos, the ancient Giscari Empire flourishes on the eastern coast of Slavers Bay, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, great civilizations in the world. The Giscari Empire is built on large-scale slavery of conquered peoples, who toil away to build the Great Pyramids of Old Guise and its colonies. c. 6000 BC, on the western side of Slavers Bay, a race of peaceful shepherds find dragons lairing in the 14 Fires, an immense chain of volcanoes extending across the neck of the Valyrian Peninsula. The Valyrians tame the dragons with magic and begin expanding their influence into the rest of Essos. c. 6000 to 5000 BC, the Giscari Wars. Inevitably, the expanding Valyrian freehold comes into conflict with the Giscari Empire over which superpower will dominate the continent. They fight a series of 5 great wars, ending with the Valyrians throwing down the Giscari in defeat. Old Guise is burned to ashes with dragonfire and never rebuilt. The Valyrian freehold absorbs all of the Giscari's former territories to their east, including all of the Giscari colony cities in Slavers Bay, such as Astapor, Yunkai, and Myrine. c. 700 BC, the Rhoynish Wars. The Valyrian freehold begins settling the region of the modern free cities. Their expansion brings them into conflict with the native inhabitants of the region surrounding the river Rhoyne. Nymeria, the warrior queen of the Rhoynar, realizes that they cannot stand against dragons and they flee to Dorne, in southern Westeros. There Nymeria marries Lord Mors Martell and helps House Martell conquer the rest of Dorne, finally unifying the region as one kingdom. c. 500 BC, revolting slaves take over the Valyrian fleet they were being transported in, and use the ships to flee from the Valyrian-controlled areas of central Essos to the northwestern corner of the continent. There they find a secretive lagoon protected by mountains and narrow access channels, where they found the secret city of Braavos. c. 200 BC, the Valyrians annex Dragonstone, an island in the narrow sea just off the eastern coast of Westeros. The Targaryen family takes control of the island, which is used as a trading post with the Seven Kingdoms. According to legend, Enar Targaryen had a vision of impending catastrophe and arranged to have his family removed from the freehold. c. 100 BC, the doom of Valyria, the 14 Fires erupt in a titanic explosion that obliterates the heartland of the Valyrian freehold. Most of the Valyrian dragons, who lair in the volcanoes when not needed, are killed outright. The city of Valyria is partially buried under vast amounts of ash. The Valyrian peninsula fractures and breaks apart. A large part of it is torn away from the mainland, low-lying areas are flooded and many offshore islands are formed. The waters around Valyria remain poisonous until the present day. c. 100 BC, c. 2 AC, the Century of Blood. In the aftermath of the Doom, Valyria's outlying colony cities began breaking away and asserting their independence, becoming the 9 free cities. The following 100 years are chaotic free-for-all of almost constant warfare between them, also known as the Bleeding Years. Worse, without the Valyrian dragons to keep them in check anymore, the Dothraki-mounted hordes spilled out of the central plains of Essos to sweep across most of the continent, in their first great wave of pillaging. For a time the Dothraki sacked cities at will, until their attacks were finally checked at the Battle of Qohor. Raids would continue afterwards but never on the same scale. Paralleling the free cities to the west, east of Valyria the Giscari cities of Slavers Bay also reasserted their independence. Towards the end of this period, Volantis grew enough in strength to try to conquer and unite all of the other free cities, but Volantis was ultimately defeated. Afterwards, the free cities settled into somewhat more stable political patterns, just as Aegon Targaryen was uniting the Seven Kingdoms in Westeros. Thought to initially be a modest community of shepherds, the Valyrians rose to prominence 5,000 years ago after they discovered dragons living in the 14 Fires, a string of volcanoes in the mountains of their homeland. After taming the mighty beasts, the Valyrians used them to conquer surrounding lands of the Valyrian Peninsula, and began expanding outwards. The Giscari Empire, located on the opposite shore of Slavers Bay from the Valyrians, was the first major power to face them in battle. Seeking to halt Valyrian expansion, the Giscari declared war on their neighbors. Massive legions of Giscari slave soldiers marched against Valyria in a series of 5 major wars, but each time they were defeated. The Freehold's forces then marched on the Giscari capital of Guise and laid waste to it, leaving little more than a smoldering ruin behind and nearly eradicating the Giscari people and culture from history. Afterward, the Valyrian Freehold became the dominant civilization in the known world, with its own language, religion and customs. The Freehold founded a number of colony cities, connected by a network of roads, all of which led back to the capital city. Several of these colonies in the west became the Free Cities. They eventually came into conflict with the Rhoynar city-states along the Rhône River, leading to the Rhoynish Wars. The fighting culminated about 1,000 years ago with the defeat of the Rhoynar and destruction of their cities, with the survivors fleeing in a mass migration led by Nymeria, whose refugee fleet eventually settled in Dorne in southeastern Westeros. A few centuries ago, one of the great families of Valyria, the Targaryens, established the fortress of Dragonstone on an island off the coast of Westeros, using it as a trading outpost of the Valyrian Freehold. The Doom and Aftermath. For nearly 5,000 years, Valyrian supremacy remained uncontested. However, a cataclysmic event known as the Doom, a massive volcanic eruption of the 14 Fires, laid waste to the Valyrian capital, its people, and the surrounding lands. The Valyrian peninsula itself was shattered and the ocean came sweeping in, becoming the Smoking Sea. Dragons, as well as Valyrian recorded history, spells, and knowledge were lost. With its center of power destroyed, the empire collapsed. Of the mighty families of dragon lords who ruled the Freehold, only House Targaryen survived, as it had established Dragonstone far across the narrow sea years before the Doom. The surviving colonies of the Valyrian Freehold split up into rival independent city-states. In the west, they became the Free Cities. In the east, the conquered Giscari cities of Slavers Bay reasserted their independence, but 5,000 years of Valyrian domination had swept away most of their original culture. With the heartland of the Freehold destroyed, its surviving colonies to the west and east reasserted their independence, politically fracturing the continent and initiating a series of savage wars for dominance known as the Century of Blood, during which Volantis attempted to reform the Valyrian Empire under their rule, but ultimately failed. Several of these colonies formed into the Free Cities in the west, and the cities of Slavers Bay in the east. The Valyrian peninsula itself in the center remained devastated and largely deserted. Meanwhile, without the Valyrians and their dragons to keep them in check, the Dothraki mounted hordes swept across the continent from the central plains of the Dothraki Sea, plundering and carving out new domains from surrounding areas. From the Dothraki point of view, the Doom started their own golden age of conquest and expansion. In the far northwest of Essos, the hidden city of Braavos, founded by escaped slaves who fled Valyria, now revealed itself to the world. While the other Valyrian colonies were left in chaos, Braavos was an island of stability because it had no political or economic ties with the Freehold, and quickly rose to become the most powerful of the Free Cities. The ruins of Valyria in the Smoking Sea remain and are considered to be cursed by other civilizations. Some believe that the Doom still rules Valyria, inhabiting it with demons and preventing anyone from ever entering the ruins and emerging alive. In response to the disease known as grayscale, the cities of the east send those most affected by the plague, known as the Stone Men, to the ruins of Valyria to die. The advanced disease means that few, if any, of the Stone Men retain any lucid thought, becoming monstrous creatures who attack any who wander through Valyria. Cities. Ruined cities, Old Valyria, Tyria, Oris. Surviving colonies in the Free Cities, Lorith, Lys, Myr, Norvos, Pentos, Qohor, Tyrosh, Volantis, Valasar, Selharis, Volan Neris. Surviving colonies in the Valyrian Peninsula, Mantries, Illyria, Tolos. Surviving cities in Slavers Bay, Meereen, Astapor, Yunkai. In the books. In the A Song of Ice and Fire novels, Valyria had no single ruler and was neither a kingdom nor an empire. Officially, all of the freeborn landholders, freeholders, had equal say in government, hence the formal name of their civilization was the Valyrian Freehold. In practice, however, this meant that the Freehold was essentially an oligarchy, run by wealthy noble families. There were about 40 such families of wealth, high birth, and strong sorceress ability. Known as dragon lords, they were the ones that owned dragons intended to dominate the rest of the population. The Targaryens were one of these families, but far from the most powerful. Because this situation of powerful families was de facto rather than de jure, the Dragonlord families were not noble houses as the Westerosi understand them. The Freehold not only conquered the Giscari Empire, but also the city-states of the Rhoynar people established around the Rhône River, leading to that people's exodus across the sea to Dorne. The modern free cities, as well as several other cities throughout Essos, were established as Valyrian colonies and became independent after the freehold was shattered. The major exception to this is the free city of Braavos, located in the extreme northwestern corner of Essos. Braavos was founded by escaped slaves who fled their Valyrian captors, and the city remained hidden even long after the doom of Valyria. For this reason, Braavos is thus sometimes referred to as the bastard daughter of Valyria. The Valyrians had a strong policy of religious tolerance. Everyone in the freehold, from dragonlord to slave, was free to believe in and practice whatever religion they chose, as long as they fulfilled their duties and paid their taxes. In fact, some of the free cities were founded by religious dissidents who found the freehold too tolerant. Allowing such measures was basic good governance on the Valyrians' part, and also a means of keeping their large slave population under relative control. The Valyrians themselves had their own gods, but the maesters of Westeros believed that the dragonlords were so arrogant that they considered themselves above any religious affiliation, including their own.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.